Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel Fraser from DWS. I just want to welcome you to today's Community Cafe. If you haven't joined us before, we just wanted to create this series to give our customers the chance to make the most of the investment you've made in our Dimension product. So we're just going to go through some of the different issues that you might be facing, some of the different functionality that we want to highlight in these community cafe sessions. And we really want to make this as interactive as possible, just to help you work with our products in the best way for you and your business. We have our solution experts on hand to walk you through the tips and tricks just to make, again, as I said, your life a little bit easier. So today's session is on the Dimension SwifTest product and on the how to benefit from group actions. My colleague Sean Mayer is going to walk us through the outline of the group actions functionality, which we recently introduced. So if you've got any questions, you can either put them in the chat or please feel free, we can unmute you or you can unmute yourself just to talk to us directly. We'd be really happy to answer any questions you have and just to get any feedback to help us understand how you working with our product and how you can benefit from it in the best way possible. So with that, I will hand over to Sean and just turn it over to him for group actions. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Rachel. So today we're talking about group actions. These really just add a tremendous amount of flexibility and functionality to your tests, so that your tests can become even more soft-coded and robust. And the idea with group actions is really exactly as the name suggests. You group actions together either because they're similar in some way and they make sense to be grouped together, or because you want to add some special logic to the groups, so that those groups will only be executed in certain circumstances or repeatedly. So there's 4 different types of group actions. The first one is called the block. The block group action has no special logic around it. It's just, a way to group actions together to make your tests, maybe they're quite large tests, more manageable. As an example of this, I've created, this is something we do, when we're doing unit tests, we create our tests into, we set them up into different sections. So you can have a setup section, which is going to set up the environment so that your test can execute. Then there's an execute section, which will do the actual test. And then there's a verify section that verifies that the test actually was successful and tested, what it was supposed to be testing. And then, this will also do a tear down part where it will clean that up. So if we expand that group, the setup section is logging in, opening P4210. This test is just creating a sales order and verifying that it exists in the database. So the setup section is going to log in, open P4210 and click the add button. So now we're all set up and we can start running our test. So now we can execute the test and that'll enter the sales order. So enter the header information, enter a grid row, click OK to create the order, save the order number that was created, and then close back to the customer service inquiry screen. And now we can verify. So it'll take the order number that was created, press the find button, find the number of rows that are on the grid and check that it's equal to the expected value, and then close the application and log out. So this would be the teardown. So very useful, the block action, just to group actions together that somehow make sense so that your tests become easier to maintain. And this is also really easy if I've got the same execute section in a number of different places, I can just copy the whole group and paste it into another test. Next up, we've got if groups. This is a really good example of when you can use an if group. So in this particular test, we're going to post a batch, but it could be that the batch is already posted. And maybe the fact that the batch is being posted is not the important part of the test, and it's not really what we want to test. Maybe we've got this in a test queue, So at that point, we need the batch to be posted, but we don't really care if this test posted it or if something else posted it. So we can add this group action, and inside the group will be the actions that actually post a batch. But before we call those, we can just check if the batch status is already posted. So this test, we're going to log in, open the work with batches application. We're going to use the batch number that's supplied, press find button, and store the batch status. If the batch is already posted, that's great. We're just going to skip to the end of the test and close down. But if the batch is not posted, then we're actually going to post the batch. So you can see this is adding a lot of flexibility to this testing and making it more robust so that your tests become sort of smarter and can sort of adapt to the data in the system. The next type of block of group actions is called while. So in this test, imagine that we've got a really slow enterprise server, or that just a lot of stuff's running on it at the moment. And we need this test to post a batch. So in this case, we're always going to post the batch. We just assume that it's always unposted. So we're going to log in, launch work with batch applications. We're going to we'll work with batches application. Then we're going to find our batch, post it, and then this is where we need to make the test more flexible, because the enterprise server might be slow in posting this batch, and we can't just let the test keep running. We want to hold it back until the batch is actually posted. So in this case, we're going to get the batch status, and we're going to create this group, which is just going to slow the test down until the batch is actually posted. So we're going to say while the batch status that we just fetched is not equal to D, which is posted, do this, keep executing this group and these actions inside the group. And we built this maximum number of repeats because you don't want to get into a situation where you've got an infinite loop that the condition can't be met. Maybe someone has brought down the enterprise server, or maybe someone's got a job that's running on there that's just going to take 6 hours. This will execute this 99 times. This is configurable, but the default is 99. So this batch is just going to pause for 15 seconds, then it's going to press find to refresh the page, and then it's going to get the new batch status. And this should execute until the batch is posted, and then it'll fall out of this loop and the test can continue, and then the next test in the group can execute as well. And then the last type of group actions is called the repeat. And this is really handy if you just might need to repeat your tests or part of a test for a certain number of time. Maybe you're generating data that's going to be used in your test. So you need 10 item numbers. So then you create a test which creates a single item number and just repeat that 10 times to get the data that you need. In this case, what we're using it for is to repeat through data in a repository data store. For each This test is going to create a sales order, and for each row that we read from the repository, we're going to insert into the grid. So we're going to log in, open P4210, click the add button, enter our header information, and then this is where things get interesting. So we're going to create a runtime data store item called row number, and this is going to keep track of the row that we've read from the repository data store and the row that we're inserting to in the sales order grid. So we also need to know how many times to repeat. We could hard code this and just assume that there's going to be 10 rows in the grid in the repository data store, and that's how many rows we're going to read. In this case, I'm going to set the number of times to repeat is going to be equal to the number of rows in the repository. And that just makes the test a little bit more flexible, because if there are currently 10 rows in the repository, when we grab the number of rows and we put in the number of times to repeat, that's how many times it's going to repeat. But then if I go and delete 5 rows out of the repository, the next time this runs, when we store the number of rows in the repository, this is going to be set to 5, and that's how many times we're going to repeat. So we'll only repeat this for every row that's in the repository data store. So your tests are becoming even more flexible and even more soft-coded. And the actions that we're going to repeat is just to load a row from the repository, use the data that it's retrieved to enter the quantity, the item, and then it's going to increment the row number. So the first time this comes through, the row number is going to be set to 1. Then we're going to increment it by 1. It's now going to be set to 2. So we'll load row 2 into the data, and it'll keep doing that for as many rows as there are in the repository data store. Just want to mention that you can also create multiple groups and groups. So you can create this as many times, you can create as many levels down in the groups as you want. So in this case, it's the same test, but after we enter the item number in the grid, we're going to say if the business unit is equal to 30. So we've got an if group inside a repeat group. Then we can do some sort of special logic, you know, specific for this business unit. In this case, I've just set a comment action, but you can add whatever you want. You can create as many levels in this as you want, but that does also just add to the complexity that you've got in your tests. You've got to find a fine balance between creating very easy to maintain tests, but also very functional tests. And now, just last up, I'll show you how to create a group action. So we've got a test check called counter. I'm going to add an action to this test. We are going to manually set a runtime data store item. I'm going to call this counter, and I'm going to give it a value of 1. And then I'm going to create a group action. So it'll ask us what type, block, if, while, repeat. We're going to choose a while action. And this is where it says the maximum number of times to repeat. So this is that fail safe to sort of show to stop the group running forever. It's the maximum number of times. It'll be 99, but this is where we set the condition. This is how we tell it the special logic that we want to add to this group. So we tried to make this look like overriding data selection within the batch applications application in JD Edwards. So here we're going to say we're going to select our counter that we created in the previous section, and we can say while this is less than, and we'll just hard code a value of 5. That's going to be the condition that we've added to this group. So let's go back and look at our test. So we stored 1 in counter, and then we said while counter is less than 5 or a maximum of 99 times. There shouldn't be any actions in our group, but we can add an action to that group. And we're just going to increment counter the value of 1. So set counter to 1, while counter is less than 5, just increase the value of 1. So I'll execute these actions, and you can see what it looks like while it runs. And I'll expand that while. So you'll see it's running through this while every time it's testing. So the first time it came through, incremented the value. While 2 is less than 5, 2 is less than 5, so it'll continue. It'll increment, increment, increment until it gets to here. While 5 is less than 5, 5 is not less than 5, so that is false, and it falls out of the while statement. So hopefully that's given you a good idea about how to create group actions and the various types and when they might be useful.
Thanks, Sean. That was really useful. So yeah, I don't know if anybody has any quick questions or observations or anything that they just wanted to ask Sean while he's here. Just anything extra from what we've covered today. I have unmuted everybody, so you feel free to speak, or even just put it into the chat if you prefer not to. And if everybody's comfortable with that, with what we've shown, then we're more than happy as well just to end the call and give you your day back. So very happy that you could join us today, and appreciate the time, and we look forward to seeing you in the next community cafe. Thanks, Sean.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. And with that, we'll end the call today. Thanks, guys.